My BIL tried to be the man of the house while my husband was deployed. I made sure he learned his place. Ryan left for his third deployment 6 months ago, 12-month tour. Before he left, his mother, Helen, called. Derek needs a place to stay. His divorce is messy. Since Ryan won't be there, Derek can help with the house. A man around will be good for security. I didn't need security. I'm a former Marine myself. Did 2 tours in Afghanistan before getting out to start our family. But Helen insisted, and Ryan thought it would make his mom happy. Derek moved into our garage apartment the week after Ryan deployed. The first week was fine. He kept to himself, went to work, and came home late. Then he started inserting himself. The garbage goes out on Tuesday nights, not Wednesday mornings, he announced, moving my cans. Ryan always did it at night. I prefer mornings, I said. He moved them anyway. Next came the lawn. I'd hired a service since Ryan left. Derek canceled it. Waste of money. I'll do it. But he only mowed when he felt like it, letting it grow too long, making the HOA send warnings. You're making Ryan look bad, he said, as if the warnings weren't his fault. Then the groceries. I'd come home to find my fridge reorganized. Vegetables go in the crisper, not on the shelf, he'd lecture. And why are you buying name brand? The store brand is cheaper. Ryan wouldn't waste money like this. The bills were next. He started collecting mail, opening anything that looked official. Just making sure nothing important gets missed, he said. You know how women can be with finances. I'm an accountant. I manage $3 million in assets for my firm. But sure, I needed Derek to explain electricity bills. 2 months in, things escalated. I came home to find him in Ryan's office on Ryan's computer, just organizing files, he said. Ryan asked me to keep an eye on things. Ryan did not ask that. I called Ryan that night on video chat, told him about Derek. Ryan was furious but stuck overseas. I'll talk to him, he promised. But Derek didn't have international calls set up, so Ryan called Helen instead. Asking her to talk to Derek, Helen called me instead. Don't be difficult, she said. Derek's helping you. A woman alone needs guidance. Ryan would want his brother protecting you. Protecting. That's what she called it. 3 months in, our neighbor Joan mentioned something odd. Your brother-in-law is very devoted, and it told us at the block party he's basically running 2 households now. Said you're struggling without Ryan, that he's had to take over everything. I hadn't been invited to the block party. Derek went alone, apparently as the man of the house. 4 months in, I discovered Derek had been telling people more than that. My friend Riza worked at the same construction company as Derek. Girl, you need to know what he's saying, she told me over coffee. He's telling everyone you're falling apart, that you cry yourself to sleep. He has to manage your money because you're too emotional to handle it. He actually said you're lucky he moved in or you'd have lost the house by now. But the worst part? He's also hinting that you're getting too attached to him, that he has to be careful not to lead you on because you're vulnerable and confused without Ryan. I wanted to destroy him then, but I waited. Patience is everything. Month 5, Derek crossed the final line. I came home to find him with a locksmith, changing the locks on the main house. Not the garage apartment, the main house. My house. What are you doing? I demanded. Upgrading security, he said. As the man in charge while Ryan's gone, I need access to everything. Don't worry, I'll give you a key. Give me a key. To my own house. The locksmith looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, is this your property? Yes, I said. And this man is a tenant in the garage. He has no authority here. Derek laughed. I'm not a tenant. I'm family. I'm the acting head of household. That's when I smiled. Perfect, then you won't mind the household meeting I've called for tonight. Derek looked confused but shrugged. Whatever makes you feel involved. That evening I invited Helen, Ryan's other brother Paul, his sister Lisa, and Derek's ex-wife Tanya. Yes, Tanya. We'd become friends. Derek had no idea. Everyone gathered in my living room. Derek sat in Ryan's chair like he owned it. Thanks for coming, I began. I wanted to discuss the household situation while Ryan's deployed. Helen nodded approvingly. Good idea. Derek's been doing so much. He has, I agreed. In fact, he's been so involved I thought everyone should know exactly what he's been up to. I pulled out my laptop. I opened the laptop and connected it to the TV mounted on the wall. Derek shifted in Ryan's chair, still looking relaxed. Helen sat forward, ready to hear about all the helpful things her son had been doing. The first slide appeared on the screen, a spreadsheet filled with dates, times, and specific incidents. Column headers read, date, violation, evidence type, and impact. The first entry showed the garbage cans incident from week 2, complete with a photo timestamp. Derek's name appeared next to each row. I watched his face as he scanned the screen. His smirk faded when he reached the entries about the text messages. Screenshots showed his exact words to 3 different neighbors. The messages painted me as incompetent and emotional. One message claimed I called him crying about bills I couldn't understand. Another said I begged him to take over the lawn care because I was too overwhelmed. All lies, all documented. Helen started to speak, but I clicked to the next slide. Ring doorbell footage filled the screen. The timestamp showed last Tuesday afternoon. Derek walked up to my front porch, checked over his shoulder, then opened the mailbox. He pulled out a stack of letters and flipped through them. 3 envelopes went into his jacket pocket. The rest he carried inside. The next clip showed him coming back out 20 minutes later. He walked directly to the recycling bin and dropped something inside. I'd retrieved those letters from the recycling later that day. 2 were from my bank. 1 was a personal letter from my sister, all addressed to me, all opened by Derek. Paul leaned forward in his seat. His jaw tightened as he watched his brother casually steal my mail. Lisa pulled out her phone without saying anything. Tanya spoke up from her spot near the window. She'd been quiet until now, just watching Derek squirm. Her voice came out steady and calm. She'd seen all this before. She told everyone that Derek did the same things during their marriage. He insisted on opening all the mail, even letters from her family. He reorganized the kitchen without asking, then got angry when she couldn't find anything. He canceled her gym membership and told people she was wasting money on vanity. He controlled every household decision by claiming he knew better. When she pushed back, he told her family she was being difficult and emotional. The pattern was identical. I clicked to the next slide. Documentation of the lawn service cancellation appeared. The email Derek sent to the company came from my email account. He'd accessed my computer while I was at work. The cancellation notice was dated 3 weeks after Ryan deployed. Below that, I'd included the HOA violation notices. 4 warnings over 2 months about grass height exceeding community standards. Each notice addressed to me as the homeowner. At the bottom of the slide, photos showed the overgrown lawn at various stages. The final photo showed Derek mowing, but only the front yard, leaving the back completely untouched. Lisa's fingers moved across her phone screen. She was taking notes, her lawyer brain recognizing deliberate sabotage. The lawn service had cost $120 monthly. The HOA fines totaled $350. Derek's selective maintenance created problems he then blamed on me. The next slide showed text message screenshots between Derek and his co-workers. I'd gotten these from Riza, who'd been disturbed enough to forward them to me. The messages were explicit. Derek wrote that he was teaching me my place. Another message said he was showing me what a real man does around the house. A third claimed I needed to learn that women can't handle things without male guidance. He'd written that Ryan asked him to straighten me out while he was deployed. That last part was a complete lie. Helen's face went pale as she read her son's words. Her hand moved to her mouth. This wasn't helping. This was a systematic campaign to undermine me in my own home. The evidence kept mounting. I pulled up Joan's written statement next. She'd provided a detailed account of the block party from last month. Derek had introduced himself as the man of the house. He told neighbors I was having trouble adjusting to Ryan's absence. He claimed I had emotional breakdowns at night. He said he had to take over the bills because I was too upset to handle them properly. Joan wrote that she found it strange because she'd seen me leaving for work every morning, always professional and composed. She'd also noticed I was never invited to these neighborhood events that Derek attended alone. Paul turned to look directly at Derek, and he asked if Derek actually said those things to the neighbors. Derek opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His silence confirmed everything. The confident posture he'd held at the start of the meeting was gone. He slouched in Ryan's chair, no longer meeting anyone's eyes. Tanya added more context. She explained that Derek told similar lies about her to her own family during their marriage. He isolated her from her support systems by painting her as unstable and irrational. Her own mother started questioning her competence because of Derek's constant stories. It's textbook controlling behavior. Tanya had been documenting his patterns since their separation. Her lawyer needed the evidence for the divorce proceedings. She recognized immediately what Derek was doing to me because she'd lived through the same treatment. The financial records came next. I'd prepared a comprehensive breakdown of every bill paid during Ryan's deployment: mortgage, utilities, insurance, property taxes, all paid on time. The account balances showed steady growth. I'd actually increased our savings by $800 monthly through careful budgeting. My professional financial management was flawless. Yet Derek had told multiple people at his construction company that I was mismanaging money. He claimed he had to step in to prevent financial disaster. He said I was making emotional purchases and forgetting to pay important bills. Riza had heard him tell their supervisor that he was essentially supporting me financially. All lies, all disproven by the records on screen. Helen tried to argue. She said Derek was just trying to help. Maybe his approach was wrong, but he meant well. Lisa cut her off before she could finish. Her voice was sharp and clear. Meaning well doesn't excuse lying to the entire neighborhood. It doesn't justify attempting to take control of someone else's property. Intent doesn't matter when the actions cause real harm. Lisa gestured at the screen, at all the documented violations. This wasn't help. This was systematic manipulation and control. The final piece of evidence was the security footage from earlier today. The video showed Derek standing with the locksmith at my front door. The audio was clear. Derek instructed the locksmith to change all the locks on the main house. He stated he needed access to everything as the acting head of household. The locksmith asked if I knew about this work. Derek said I'd authorized it, but I was at work. The locksmith looked uncomfortable but continued working until I arrived home. The video showed my confrontation with Derek, his claim that he was family and had authority. The locksmith's body language showed his discomfort as Derek insisted he had the right to control access to my house. The room stayed silent as the video ended. I clicked to the next slide. Paul leaned forward in his chair. His face changed as he looked at Derek. He asked what the hell Derek was thinking trying to lock me out of my own house. Derek's mouth opened, but nothing came out right away. He shifted in Ryan's chair. He said something about security upgrades being standard. He said it was just making sure everything was protected. Paul cut him off. He pointed at the screen showing the locksmith footage. He said security upgrades don't involve removing the homeowner's access. He said that's called locking someone out. Derek tried to explain that he needed keys to everything. He said it was about being able to respond to emergencies. Paul asked what emergencies Derek thought he'd need to handle inside my house without me knowing. Derek had no answer. The room stayed quiet for a moment. Then Tanya spoke up. Her voice was steady and calm. She said Derek tried the exact same thing during their divorce. She said he attempted to change the locks on their shared home to force her out. She had to get a restraining order. That's part of why their divorce is so messy. That's why Derek actually needed a place to stay. He couldn't stay in their old house because of the court order. Helen's face went pale. She looked at Tanya and then at Derek. She asked if that was true. Derek said Tanya was twisting things. He said their situation was different. Tanya shook her head. She said it was exactly the same pattern. She said Derek always needs to control the space around him. When he feels like he's losing control, he tries to take over physically. Changing locks, moving belongings, making decisions without permission. Helen tried to defend Derek again. She said he was just trying to help both times. She said maybe his approach was wrong, but his heart was in the right place. Lisa interrupted before Helen could finish. Her voice was sharp. She said meaning well, doesn't excuse lying to the entire neighborhood. It doesn't justify trying to take control of someone else's property. She said intent doesn't matter when the actions cause real harm. She gestured at the laptop screen. She said this wasn't help. This was systematic manipulation and control. Helen looked down at her hands. Her defense of Derek sounded weaker now. She was processing that her son had a documented pattern of this behavior across multiple relationships. I moved to the next slide. This one showed a compilation of statements Derek made to different people. The first was from his co-worker at the construction site. Derek told him I was getting attached, that I was confused and vulnerable without Ryan, that Derek had to be careful not to lead me on. The second statement was from a neighbor 3 doors down. Derek told her the same thing, that I was starting to depend on him too much emotionally. The third was from someone at the gym Derek went to. He said I was making things awkward by being too grateful for his help. The audacity of it landed in the room like a physical thing. Derek suggested I would be interested in him while my husband was deployed serving our country. Paul actually laughed. The sound was harsh and disbelieving. He looked at Derek and then at me. He said, "Let me get this straight." He said I'm a former Marine who clearly has my life together. He said Derek is a divorced guy living in someone's garage. He asked how Derek thought anyone would believe I was the one making advances. The absurdity of Derek positioning himself as the one fending off advances became crystal clear. Lisa was shaking her head. Helen looked sick. Tanya nodded slowly like she'd been waiting for this. She said Derek made similar claims during their marriage. He would suggest other women were interested in him. He'd hint that co-workers or neighbors found him attractive. It made Tanya feel insecure. It made her feel like she should be grateful Derek stayed with her. She said it's a manipulation tactic. It's designed to make the woman feel off balance. It elevates Derek's importance and keeps women questioning themselves. I clicked to the final piece of evidence. This was an audio recording from this afternoon I'd set my phone to record before I left for work. The locksmith's voice came through clearly. He asked Derek if the homeowner knew about this work. Derek's response was recorded perfectly. He said Ryan left him in charge. He said I was having trouble accepting male authority. He said that's why he needed his own keys to everything. The locksmith sounded uncomfortable. He asked again if I'd authorized the lock changes. Derek said yes, but I was at work. The locksmith said he usually liked to confirm directly with the property owner. Derek got irritated. He said he was family, and that should be enough. The recording ended. Helen made a sound like she'd been hit. She wasn't defending Derek anymore. Her face showed genuine distress. She was seeing the extent of his manipulation documented so thoroughly. She said she knew Derek could be controlling sometimes. She said she didn't realize how calculated it all was. She said she didn't understand it was this systematic. Lisa spoke up. Her lawyer voice was clear and firm. She said what Derek did constitutes harassment. She said it's trespassing on authority he doesn't have. She said it's possibly illegal interference with my property rights. She said she's concerned about the legal implications. She's also concerned about the family dynamics that enabled this situation. She looked at Helen when she said that last part. Paul turned to face Derek directly. He said Derek lied to their mother to gain access to my home. He said Derek then systematically tried to take control while Ryan was deployed and couldn't defend his wife or property. Derek tried to justify his actions. He said he was just being a good brother. He said he was doing what Ryan would have wanted. Paul dismantled each excuse. He said Ryan wanted his wife's home respected. He said Ryan wanted his family to support me, not undermine me. He said Derek used Ryan's absence to play out some fantasy of being in charge. Derek's attempts to explain sounded increasingly pathetic. Each word made him look smaller. I turned my attention to Helen. She needed to understand this wasn't just about Derek's behavior. Her pressure put me in this position from the start. Ryan trusted his family to respect me and our home. That trust got broken within weeks of his deployment. Helen looked uncomfortable as I spoke. She shifted in her seat. Her hands twisted together in her lap. I kept my voice steady and calm. I explained how her insistence on Derek staying made Ryan feel obligated. He wanted to make his mother happy. He believed family would support me properly. Instead, Derek used that access to systematically undermine me. Helen's face showed she was starting to understand. The weight of her role in this situation settled on her shoulders. Tanya leaned forward. She looked directly at Helen. Her voice was firm, but not angry. She told Helen she tried to warn the family about Derek's controlling patterns during the divorce. Helen had dismissed those concerns completely. She called Tanya a bitter ex-wife just trying to cause problems. Tanya said maybe now Helen would believe these patterns were real and damaging. Helen's eyes filled with tears. She nodded slowly. The evidence was too clear to deny anymore. Helen turned to face me fully. Her apology came with genuine remorse in her voice. She admitted she prioritized Derek's needs over respecting my household and my ability to manage things. She said she made assumptions based on old ideas about gender roles. She thought Derek should naturally take charge with Ryan gone. She said a man should be in control. She realized now how wrong that thinking was. I managed fine before Derek arrived. I would have managed fine without his interference. Her assumptions caused real harm. Lisa spoke up next. Her lawyer voice cut through the emotional moment. She asked Derek what he expected to accomplish by systematically undermining me and spreading lies about my ability to handle things. Derek's response came slowly. His voice was quieter now. He talked about his divorce and how it made him feel like a failure. He needed to feel like he was in control of something after his life fell apart. He thought helping me would prove he was still capable, still needed. Lisa listened, but her expression didn't soften. Paul jumped in before Derek could say more. He told Derek that feeling bad about his divorce didn't excuse trying to take over someone else's life, especially when that person was family who gave him a place to stay during his crisis. Paul's voice got harder. He said the betrayal of using Ryan's deployment as an opportunity to assert control was disgusting. Ryan was overseas serving the country. Derek repaid that sacrifice by disrespecting Ryan's wife and home. The room went quiet for a moment. I let the silence sit there. Then I made my announcement. Derek needed to be out of the garage apartment by the end of the week. I would be changing all locks and security codes once he left. No one would have access to my property without my explicit permission. Helen didn't argue. She just nodded. She recognized that Derek had burned this bridge completely. There was no coming back from what he'd done. Tanya offered to help Derek find another place to stay. Her tone made it clear this wasn't kindness. She wanted to make sure he actually left and didn't create more problems. She explained she'd learned that clear boundaries and follow-through were necessary with Derek's personality type. You had to see things through completely, or he'd find ways to worm back in. Lisa volunteered to draft a formal agreement about Derek's move-out terms. She wanted no confusion or room for Derek to claim he had rights to stay longer. Paul agreed to physically help Derek move his stuff. He'd make sure it happened on schedule, no delays or excuses. The family was taking concrete action to fix the situation they'd helped create. Helen asked if she could help repair the damage Derek caused. She offered to contact neighbors and correct the false stories he spread about me. I appreciated the offer, but I told her I'd handle my own reputation. I could speak for myself, though she could certainly stop making excuses for Derek's behavior going forward. That would be the most helpful thing. Helen agreed. She said she would stop enabling him. Derek finally spoke up to defend himself. He claimed he was just trying to help. I was overreacting to normal family support. He made it sound like I was being unreasonable about standard brotherly concern. The room's response was immediate and unified. Paul shook his head in disbelief. Lisa actually laughed at the audacity. Tanya's expression showed she'd heard this exact defense before. Helen looked at her son with disappointment. Nobody was buying Derek's attempt to reframe systematic boundary violations as helpful family support. The evidence laid out too clearly what he'd actually done. Tanya made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh, more like air being forced out through her teeth. She looked at Derek with an expression I recognized from my own mirror lately. The kind of tired that comes from dealing with the same nonsense over and over. She told him he used those exact words with her. Just trying to help. That's what he said when he took over her bank accounts. When he started opening her mail. When he told her friends she was too emotional to handle basic decisions. She leaned forward in her chair and spoke directly to him. Until he stopped pretending he was helping and admitted he just wanted control, he'd keep doing this to every woman in his life. The pattern wouldn't stop on its own. I added my own piece to that. Told Derek that if he'd actually wanted to help me, he could have asked what I needed. Simple question. How can I support you while Ryan's gone? Instead, he decided he knew better than me how to run my own household. He never once considered that I might be capable of managing my life. His whole approach showed what he really thought about women handling things without male supervision. The assumption that I needed managing said everything about his actual beliefs. Paul jumped in before Derek could respond. He pointed out that Derek never asked how I was doing, never offered emotional support or checked if I needed anything. He just started taking over like my ability to function was automatically questionable. That wasn't help. That was a power grab wearing a family concern costume. Paul's voice got harder. He said the whole thing was disgusting. Ryan was overseas serving the country, and Derek used that absence as an opportunity to disrespect Ryan's wife and home. Helen spoke up then. Her voice was quieter than before. She admitted she shared some of the blame here. She told Derek that a woman alone needs guidance. Those were her exact words to him. She gave him permission to see me as someone who needed his management instead of as a capable adult. She recognized now how her traditional attitudes about gender roles enabled Derek's worst instincts. She'd been raised believing men should naturally lead and women should naturally follow. But seeing Derek's behavior documented so clearly forced her to confront how damaging those beliefs could be. Lisa looked at her mother with her lawyer face on, the one that asked uncomfortable questions in depositions. She suggested that Helen might benefit from thinking about why she was more comfortable with her sons asserting control than with acknowledging her daughter-in-law's capability. Why did male authority feel more natural to her than female competence? Helen shifted in her seat. Her face showed discomfort, but she didn't argue back. She seemed to actually be considering what Lisa said instead of defending herself. The meeting started winding down after that. The energy in the room had shifted from confrontation to resolution. I laid out the terms clearly. Derek would be out of the garage apartment by the end of the week. I'd be changing all locks and security codes once he left. No one would have access to my property without my explicit permission going forward. Helen nodded her agreement. She committed to respecting my household autonomy and not pressuring Ryan or me about family living arrangements. Tanya pulled out her phone and we exchanged numbers. She suggested we stay in touch since we'd both dealt with Derek's patterns. Her tone made it clear this was about mutual support and making sure Derek actually followed through with leaving. People started gathering their things. Paul and Lisa both hugged me before heading out. Every room, every item. I'd document the condition of everything with photos and written records. Any damage or missing items would be documented and billed directly to him. I wanted no confusion about the state of things when he moved out. Derek tried one more approach. He brought up family loyalty, said that telling Ryan about all this would just stress him out during deployment. Ryan had enough to worry about overseas without family drama. Maybe we could just handle this quietly and move forward. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I told him Ryan deserved to know the truth about what happened in his home while he was serving. I wouldn't lie to my husband or hide information to protect Derek's reputation. Ryan and I didn't keep secrets from each other. Especially not secrets about someone systematically trying to take control of our household. Derek finally left. I watched through the window as he walked back to the garage apartment. Then I locked the door behind him. The next morning, I started making phone calls. Joan was first on my list. I explained that Derek had been a temporary tenant in the garage apartment, not a family member helping run the household. I corrected the record about his claims that I was struggling or falling apart. Joan apologized immediately. She said she'd thought Derek's stories seemed off given how together I obviously was. She'd seen me handling everything just fine. She promised to spread the correct information through the neighborhood. I called 3 more neighbors after that. Each conversation followed a similar pattern. They'd believed Derek's version because he seemed so confident and concerned. But hearing my side made them realize they should have questioned his narrative. Most of them admitted they'd never actually seen me struggling with anything. They'd just taken Derek's word for it. Valeria showed up around 10 with her toolbox and a bag from the hardware store. She'd picked up new locks for the garage apartment and additional security cameras. We started with the garage apartment locks. Didn't matter that Derek had until the end of the week to move out. I wanted that space secured immediately. Valeria worked on the door locks while I set up the new cameras. We installed them to cover all entry points to both the main house and the garage apartment, every door, every window on the ground floor, the driveway and backyard. I wanted complete coverage of my property. No blind spots where Derek could try something without being recorded. Valeria tested each camera to make sure the feeds were coming through clearly on my phone. We labeled them by location so I'd know exactly which camera was showing what area. The whole security upgrade took about 3 hours. By the time we finished, I had complete visual coverage of my property and new locks that only I had keys for. Derek's ability to access anything without my knowledge was gone. I watched from the front window as Derek loaded boxes into his truck the next morning. He made 3 trips between the garage apartment and his vehicle, carrying clothes and personal items without looking toward the main house. Paul showed up around noon to help with the furniture. They worked together to move Derek's bed frame and desk into Paul's pickup. The whole process took maybe 4 hours. By late afternoon, Derek's truck pulled out of the driveway. For the last time, Paul stopped by the main house afterward to let me know Derek was settled at his place temporarily. He said Derek spent most of the drive complaining about how unfair the whole situation was. According to Paul, Derek kept insisting he was just trying to help, and I overreacted to normal family support. Paul shut that down immediately. He told Derek the evidence spoke for itself, and the family wasn't going to enable his behavior anymore. Derek apparently sulked the rest of the drive in silence. Paul said Derek would be looking for his own apartment but needed a few weeks to save up for deposits. I thanked Paul for helping facilitate the move and for not buying into Derek's victim narrative. The next day, I went through official channels to request a video call with Ryan. The process took about a week to arrange since deployment communications have strict protocols. When the call finally connected, I saw Ryan's face on my laptop screen looking tired but alert. We had 30 minutes scheduled. I spent the first 5 walking him through the timeline of Derek's behavior, starting with the garbage cans and ending with the locksmith incident. Ryan's jaw tightened as I described each escalation. Then I shared my screen to show him the documentation I'd compiled. He watched the ring footage of Derek going through our mail. He read the screenshots of messages where Derek told coworkers he was teaching me my place. He saw the neighbor statements about Derek claiming I was falling apart. When I showed him the security footage from the locksmith incident, Ryan actually stood up from his chair. His face went red and he started pacing in the small space visible on camera. He apologized immediately for not pushing back harder against his mother's pressure to let Derek stay. He said he knew I could handle everything, but didn't realize his family would actively undermine me. I could see genuine anger mixed with guilt in his expression. I told Ryan the situation was handled, and Derek was gone. But we needed to talk about boundaries with his family going forward. Ryan agreed without hesitation. He said he was done letting his mother's traditional attitudes override our household decisions. We were equal partners in this marriage, and his family needed to respect that, or they wouldn't be welcome in our lives. The conviction in his voice made it clear this wasn't just deployment talk. He meant it. We spent the remaining call time discussing how we'd handle family dynamics when he got home. Ryan wanted to address things with his mother directly before his return, so the air would be clear I supported that approach. The call ended with both of us feeling more connected despite the distance and the crisis that had just passed. Ryan contacted Helen within a few days of our call. I wasn't on that conversation, but Helen called me afterward to let me know they'd spoken. Her voice sounded smaller than usual, less certain. She said Ryan made his position very clear about respecting me as an equal partner in their marriage. She admitted she took his anger seriously because Ryan rarely got that direct with her. Helen seemed genuinely affected by the conversation, rather than just going through the motions. She told me she needed to think about some things regarding her attitudes about marriage and gender roles. I appreciated that she didn't make excuses or try to minimize what happened. Over the next few weeks, I focused on reclaiming my space and routine. The house felt different without Derek's constant presence and interference. I could put groceries away however I wanted, without finding them reorganized later. I could take the garbage out Wednesday mornings without someone moving the cans Tuesday night. The lawn service I rehired did their job on schedule without anyone canceling behind my back. Small things that shouldn't have mattered became noticeable in their absence. I realized how much mental energy I'd been spending on managing Derek's boundary violations, even before I knew about the lies he was spreading. The stress I'd been carrying lifted gradually as weeks passed without his interference. My sleep improved. My focus at work sharpened. The house felt like mine again instead of a space I had to defend. Joan called one afternoon to ask if I'd come to a neighborhood coffee she was organizing. She said several neighbors wanted a chance to hear my side of things in a casual setting. I agreed and showed up Saturday morning to find about 8 neighbors gathered in Joan's living room. The atmosphere was a bit awkward at first. Then Joan opened by acknowledging that several people had believed Derek's stories without questioning why I wasn't present at neighborhood events. That broke the ice. One by one, neighbors apologized for taking Derek's word without verification. They admitted that seeing me handle everything competently should have made them question his narrative about me falling apart. A few mentioned they'd thought it was odd that Derek spoke for me instead of inviting me to speak for myself. By the end of the coffee, the record felt reasonably straight. People understood Derek had been a temporary tenant who overstepped badly, not a family member helping me through a crisis. Tanya texted me the following week asking if I wanted to meet for lunch. We picked a quiet restaurant halfway between our locations. Over salads, Tanya shared more details about her marriage to Derek and the patterns she'd identified over time. She said Derek's controlling behavior always escalated when he felt powerless in other areas of his life. During their marriage, he'd lost a job and immediately started micromanaging her daily routine. When his father got sick, Derek began making unilateral decisions about their finances without consulting her. The divorce itself triggered the worst period, where Derek tried to control everything from her social media to her family relationships. Tanya explained that understanding these patterns helped her stop taking his behavior personally. Derek wasn't targeting her specifically, or me specifically. He was responding to his own feelings of inadequacy by trying to dominate whatever situation he could access. That insight helped me process the whole experience differently. It wasn't about me being a woman alone or not capable enough. It was about Derek needing to feel in control when his life was chaotic. Lisa called a few days later to check that Derek had completed his move without leaving any loose ends. I confirmed everything was settled and thanked her for her help during the family meeting. Lisa said she was impressed with how thoroughly I'd documented everything. She mentioned that in her law practice, she wished more clients would gather evidence as systematically as I had. Most people wait until they're in crisis mode to start documenting, which makes building a case much harder. Having months of records with dates, photos, and third-party statements made the situation irrefutable. Lisa also said the family meeting approach was smart because it prevented Derek from controlling the narrative to different family members separately. Everyone heard the same information at the same time with evidence to back it up. That eliminated his ability to play people against each other or claim things were taken out of context. Helen called the following week asking if we could meet for coffee, just the two of us. I felt cautious about the invitation, but agreed to meet at a cafe near my work. Helen arrived early and had already ordered when I got there. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her coffee cup. After some initial small talk, Helen launched into what felt like a prepared speech. She apologized for her role in creating the situation with Derek. She admitted she'd pressured Ryan to let Derek stay, because she assumed I'd need male guidance and protection with Ryan deployed. Helen said she never questioned those assumptions because that's how her own mother raised her. Women needed men to handle certain things. Men naturally took charge of households. These beliefs felt like facts rather than opinions. Seeing Derek's behavior documented so clearly forced her to confront how damaging those attitudes could be. She recognized now that her traditional views about gender roles had enabled Derek's worst instincts and put me in an impossible position. I set my coffee cup down and looked at Helen directly. She needed to hear this clearly. Moving forward, our relationship could work if she respected that Ryan and I made decisions together as equal partners. No more assumptions about what a woman needed or what a man should handle. Helen nodded quickly, her eyes still watery from her earlier confession. She promised she understood now and would change how she approached things with us. I believed her because she looked genuinely shaken by seeing what her beliefs had enabled. We finished our coffee with lighter conversation about work and Ryan's upcoming return. When we left, Helen hugged me at the parking lot, holding on a bit longer than usual. The next afternoon, Paul showed up at my door carrying a cardboard box. He set it on my porch and apologized before I could even invite him inside. The box held random items Derek had left behind in the garage apartment: a phone charger, some old magazines, a coffee mug with his construction company logo. Paul said he wanted to make sure Derek didn't have any excuse to come back and claim he needed to retrieve things. Then Paul apologized for his brother's behavior and for the family enabling Derek's worst tendencies for years. He admitted they'd made excuses for Derek since he was young, always explaining away his controlling nature as just being protective or traditional. Paul said he was done with that pattern and wouldn't defend Derek's behavior anymore. I thanked him for being honest and for helping make sure Derek actually moved out on schedule. Paul mentioned Derek was staying with him temporarily, but already complaining about having rules and boundaries in Paul's house. I almost laughed at that. Derek couldn't even handle basic respect for someone else's space when he was the guest. The next few months passed in a way that felt almost strange because of how peaceful everything was. I settled back into my routine without Derek's constant interference. Work projects moved forward smoothly without coming home to reorganized groceries or opened mail. The lawn service I rehired kept everything maintained exactly on schedule. No more HOA warnings. The house stayed organized how I wanted it. I could leave vegetables on the shelf instead of the crisper without someone lecturing me about proper food storage. My stress levels dropped so much that I noticed I was sleeping better and had more energy for everything. Ryan and I kept up our regular video calls, usually twice a week depending on his schedule and time zone differences. We talked about daily life, work situations, plans for when he returned. The conversations felt different now, stronger somehow. We were being completely honest about the Derek situation and what it showed us about family dynamics. Ryan admitted he'd always known his mom had old-fashioned views, but hadn't realized how much those attitudes could damage relationships. He promised that when he came home, we'd set clear boundaries with his family about respecting our household decisions. I told him about Helen's apology and how she seemed genuinely committed to changing. Ryan was glad to hear it, but said we'd still need to maintain boundaries and not just assume everything was fixed. Smart man. About 6 weeks after Derek moved out, Tanya texted me during my lunch break at work. She'd heard through mutual connections that Derek was dating someone new already. The woman worked at a restaurant near his construction sites. According to what Tanya heard, Derek was already showing controlling behaviors with her, telling her when to text him, questioning who she talked to at work, offering to help manage her schedule. Tanya said she was debating whether to reach out and warn the woman. She knew from experience that warnings about Derek usually weren't believed until someone lived through his patterns themselves. People thought you were just a bitter ex or jealous or overreacting. But Tanya felt guilty knowing another woman was walking into the same situation she'd escaped. I texted back suggesting Tanya focus on her own healing rather than trying to save Derek's new girlfriend. People generally had to learn these lessons themselves, as unfair as that seemed. Reaching out might backfire and make Tanya look like the problem instead of Derek. Tanya agreed after thinking about it. She said she'd be available if the woman eventually reached out for support, but she wouldn't force the issue. Sometimes the best thing you could do was step back and let people figure things out, even when you knew they were heading toward pain. 3 months after the confrontation at my house, Helen called to invite me to a family dinner. Just her, Paul, Lisa, and me. Ryan couldn't attend obviously since he was still deployed, but Helen wanted to get together anyway. I agreed cautiously, not sure what to expect. The dinner was at Helen's house on a Saturday evening. When I arrived, the dynamic felt noticeably different from past family gatherings. Helen asked about my work and actually listened to my answers instead of making assumptions about what I needed help with. She wanted to know about the accounts I managed and the projects I was handling. Paul talked about his job and asked my opinion on some financial decisions he was considering. Lisa shared updates about cases at her law firm. The conversation felt balanced, like everyone's input mattered equally. During dessert, Lisa brought up something interesting. She said she'd been using my documentation methods as an example in her practice when advising clients dealing with harassment or boundary violations. The systematic approach I took to gathering evidence, with dates and photos and third-party statements, made the confrontation with Derek impossible to argue against. Lisa said most people waited until they were in crisis mode to start documenting, which made building a case much harder. Having months of organized records gave me credibility and prevented Derek from twisting the narrative. She'd recommended several clients follow similar patterns when dealing with difficult situations. I felt oddly proud hearing that something good came out of the whole mess with Derek. Helen mentioned she'd been doing some reading about traditional gender roles and how they affected family dynamics. She seemed genuinely interested in understanding where her beliefs came from and how to move past them. The dinner ended with hugs all around and plans to get together again before Ryan returned. Ryan's deployment entered its final month in early November. We started planning for his return in December, talking through logistics and expectations. I was honest with him during one video call that the Derek situation had changed some things. We'd need to have serious conversations about family boundaries when he got home. Not just about Derek specifically, but about how we handled family pressure and expectations going forward. Ryan agreed completely. He said his time deployed gave him perspective on what mattered most. Being away from home made him realize that our household decisions needed to be ours alone. Without family interference or assumptions about who should handle what. He promised we'd sit down together when he returned and establish clear boundaries that we'd both enforce with his family. I believed him because I could see in his face during our video calls that he meant it. The deployment had been hard on both of us, but maybe some good would come from it too. Better communication, stronger boundaries, a clearer understanding of what we needed from each other and from family. December couldn't come fast enough, but I was using this final month to prepare. The house was ready, our finances were solid, and I had a clear picture of what needed to happen next. I understand. I need to write beats 61 to 64 as a seamless continuation from I had a clear picture of what needed to happen next, as a single continuous paragraph with short sentences, 25 to 30 words max, using only simple 6th grade vocabulary, maintaining 97% action focus with maximum 5% dialogue, and covering the 4 specified beats about Ryan's perspective on deployment, Derek's apology request through Paul, Ryan's homecoming, and Helen's welcome dinner acknowledgement. I'll keep it between 480 to 640 words with no line breaks, no thinking blocks in the output, and no EM dashes. December arrived with snow covering the front yard, and Christmas decorations going up around the neighborhood. Ryan's plane landed at the military base on a cold Thursday morning. I drove there alone, wearing his favorite sweater and jeans. The waiting area filled with other families holding signs and flowers. When he walked through those doors in his uniform, my heart jumped. We hugged for a long time without saying much. He smelled like airports and coffee. The drive home felt surreal after months of video calls and texts. Ryan kept looking at the house as we pulled into the driveway. Everything was exactly how he left it. The lawn was trimmed. The shutters were painted. The garage apartment stood empty with new locks installed. Inside, he walked through each room slowly. His office was organized. The kitchen was clean. Our bedroom looked the same. He turned to me with wet eyes and pulled me close again. We spent that first day just being together, talking about everything that happened. I showed him all the documentation I kept. He read through Derek's messages and the neighbor statements. His jaw got tight when he saw the locksmith footage. That night in bed, he promised things would be different. His family wouldn't pressure us anymore. Our decisions would be ours alone. No more letting his mom dictate what happened in our house. I believed him because I could see he meant it. The deployment changed something in him, made him realize what actually mattered. The next week, Paul called my cell while I was making dinner. He sounded uncomfortable. Derek wanted to apologize in person before the holidays, wanted to clear the air, make things right. I stirred the pasta and told Paul no. Derek could work on his problems with a therapist. I didn't need his apology. Didn't want him in my space. Paul understood. Said he'd tell Derek to give it time. Maybe never. Helen called Ryan the following day. She wanted to host a welcome home dinner. Have the whole family over. Ryan looked at me before answering. I nodded. We could handle it. The dinner happened on a Saturday night at Helen's house. Paul and Lisa were already there when we arrived. The dining room table was set with her good dishes. Helen hugged Ryan for a long time. Then she turned to me. She said she wanted everyone to hear something. She looked right at me and said I managed everything beautifully during the deployment. That she was wrong to doubt what I could handle. Wrong to think I needed Derek's help. Wrong to push those old ideas about men and women and who should be in charge. The room went quiet. Ryan reached over and took my hand. Squeezed it tight. Helen kept going. Said she was proud of how I handled everything. Proud of the home I maintained. Proud of the way I stood up for myself and for Ryan. Lisa smiled at me from across the table. Paul nodded. Ryan kept holding my hand through the whole dinner, making it clear to everyone. We were a team. Equal partners. Our house. Our rules. Our decisions. Together.